Good morning, Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're in the book of Isaiah, and we're in the middle of, towards the beginning of, I should say, the suffering servant passage. We're in chapter 44 today, and we've talked about the themes of the coming Messiah, but also Babylonian captivity and restoration. And of course, the prophet is talking about these things. He's delivering the message generations before any of the events happen, but they're so precisely predicted. It is a foregone conclusion that these things are going to happen. They will go into Babylonian captivity, they will be restored, and they will be a people ready to receive the Messiah, and then he will come and institute the Messianic age. And that's the theme throughout this longer passage, this longest sustained prophecy about the Messiah in all the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 40 through the middle of chapter 56. So now we're in chapter 44, verse 1. He has just talked about the sins that make their captivity necessary. But now he's going to talk about the restoration again, and then about his own greatness. We're going to look at verses 1 through 5 today of chapter 44. But now listen, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus says Yahweh, who made you, who formed you from the womb, who will help you. Do not be afraid, O Jacob, my servant, and you, Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. For I will pour out water on thirsty land, and streams on the dry ground. I will pour my spirit on your offspring, my blessings on your descendants, and they will spring up among the grass like poplars by streams of waters. This one will say, I am the Lord's, and that one will call on the name of Jacob, and another will write on his hand, belonging to the Lord, and I will name Israel's name with honor. There's the notion of names is important, but he's looking forward to a time when their parent-child relationship is made more real. God as Father makes an appearance throughout the Psalms of David, but also make appearances in that metaphor, that notion of image of God as Father throughout some of the prophets. Hosea, in Hosea chapter 11, is the classic example of this, but it happens here too. Psalm 139. There's a real connection to Psalm 139 here, but also the book of Joel, I think, or maybe vice versa. But Psalm 139, you formed me in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And Isaiah, writing several generations after David, wrote Psalm 139. God says through him, I formed you in the womb, and I will help you. Don't be afraid, O Jacob, my servant. So yesterday, when we looked at that tight package of thought, that is verses 22 through 28, it began and ended with God calling his people, both Jacob and Israel. Jacob is Jacob's given name, right? Literally means the guy who trips you up, because his hand was on his brother's heel whenever they were born. The twins were born, Jacob and Esau. But God gave him the name Israel. And so he's using both his given name and then God's name for him. And it begins and ends. So this also, in this passage, the names are important. It begins with Jacob and Israel. And then it talks about Jacob and Jeshurun. Who is Jeshurun? In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 15, chapter 33, verse 5, chapter 33, verse 26, that name is given by God to the people, to the nation of Israel, and it's kind of an endearing name, a pet name, if you would. It's a bit obscure, but that's the way it's used there in those passages. And so it's another name, a secondary name, an affectionate name that God has given his people. What does it mean? Nobody knows exactly what it means. No, there's no real Hebrew explanation for what the name means. It might be connected with the word that means to stand straight, to be upright, and it could refer to someone who's, standing firm. I don't know. Nobody knows what that word means, but it has a precedent in the law, in the book of Deuteronomy, of God calling the people Jeshurun. And so that's being accessed here. And so God, again, as he does multiple times, is looking forward to the time when his children are his and back with him. And but Jacob is also a servant. So we have this simultaneous experience of being God's children and God's servants at the same time. And that's how the passage, these verses end. One will say, I'm Yahweh's, and the other will call on the name of Jacob, and another will write on his hand, belonging to the Lord, and will name Israel's name with honor. So, in other words, they're self-identifying as God's and as God's people, with God's people. They're saying, I am Yahweh's, and I'm part of Jacob. I belong to Yahweh, and I'm with Israel. I belong to Israel. I'm one of God's people, and so that's how this section ends. The writing on the hand refers to the tattooing that was done at the time when you purchased a slave, and your name would be tattooed on the hand. Now, in God's law, when an Israelite wanted to offer himself into slavery to another Israelite, we remember they got their ear pierced. At the end of 7 years, they were free, but if they wanted to stay, they would go to the doorpost and have their ear pierced to self-identify as a slave. The tattooing on the hand was something that was done throughout the Middle East at the time. Why is he using that and not the piercing of the ear? Probably it's a subtle way that the thinking person would have understood if you sit with the word and you ponder it. That this Israel, this Jacob, involves more than just Jews. It involves everybody who will come. It involves everybody who will come to God. Okay, so we're going to pick up with verse 6 next time. God himself making himself known to his own people for who he really is, and reminding us to be in awe of his greatness. Because honestly, nothing else is going to work out properly if we don't start out with the fear of the Lord. It's the beginning. And awe at his greatness is where it all has to start. And God is giving us a reason to feel that awe in verses 6 through 8. Okay, we'll pick up there next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.